you sunk at the bottom again, because from day to day you never really knew what was going to happen, what the negotiations were going to be.
Steve?
Yeah.
There's been a change. The tactical people have changed the situation, and for security reasons and for safety reasons, no one is now authorized to come out of there for any reason. And what they're telling me is that if anybody does, they are going to be dealt with in such a fashion that the people will have to retreat back to the compound.
What? I'm missing, I guess, what you're saying. Are you saying, make it as plain as possible?
The patience of the bosses is no longer where it was earlier.
Okay, I'm about ready. Listen to me now, Henry. I don't really give about your bosses. When you tell me one thing, or you tell us that is okay, and this Bradley comes up and says something contrary to what you are, you tell your bosses to get their butts together. Do you hear me?
Would you respond to the allegations that the reason why we had a Waco is because the FBI was in disarray?
It is obvious that from the time of the change in the administration, it was very clear that there was great discussion about the replacement of the director of the FBI.
In a March 11th letter to President Clinton, Acting Attorney General Stuart Gerson recommends that the president rely on other FBI leadership to resolve Waco and dismiss Director Sessions. Chief among those mentioned in Gerson's letter is Assistant Director Floyd Clark. This situation created a competitive environment for the directorship of the FBI in the midst of a major crisis.
I know this is a very political thing, and I agree that with your observation that it could be that the FBI was impaired in its ability. Certainly I was impaired in my ability.
FBI Director William Sessions attempted to fly to Waco during the siege to conduct face-to-face negotiations with David Koresh, but he was impeded by government officials in Washington, D.C.
The reason Bill Sessions never came to Waco during the siege was that the Justice Department refused to let him board his plane.
Everybody knows that I had contact directly from people associated with Mr. Koresh about the possibility of my going down and negotiating with them, coming in down there. Now, some people played that as ridiculous and ridiculed it, or as grandstanding, but it's indicative of what I felt and continue to feel. You can't discard any possibility that you can resolve that kind of circumstance when you can take and apply that negotiating capability.
The Justice Department wouldn't allow an FBI director to go and negotiate directly with a so-called terrorist who they felt had killed a number of federal agents, more or less in cold blood, and try to defuse a serious situation that ended up in a calamity and a great embarrassment for the FBI, and even greater embarrassment for law enforcement in general. And it was all politics.
They were not about to see this standoff in Waco negotiated again, because it was an opportunity for Floyd Clark and company to show that they were the FBI capable of handling a standoff and coming out winning in this kind of an incident with military kind of tactics. It was a paramilitary organization.
Maybe you might ask them if you can have some ice cream too, huh?
Could I have some ice cream?
A little bribery there. You know, right now you're considered a big terrorist, you know, and you can demand some important things like an ice cream or something, you know. Maybe they might adhere to you.
By late March, the FBI has cut off electricity to the compound and is preparing a series of military tactics to force a resolution.
A direct quote from the transcript where it is said by a negotiator to Mr. Koresh, "We had a very good dialogue last night. The electricity will not go off tonight because we have had a good dialogue this evening." That's a negotiator to Mr. Koresh. A half an hour later, no, I'm sorry, it's a negotiator to Mr. Steve Schneider. A half an hour later, the lights are turned off and left off permanently. The electricity is shut off. Why?
I can't answer the why, but I can tell you that the negotiation team was disappointed in that decision.
Since mid-March, negotiations have begun to fail, and the FBI resorts to psychological warfare.
I don't appreciate their music.
You don't?
I'm trying to sleep at night from their music.
I thought you being a teenager, you might like some of those Martian sounds.
My little sister.
Oh, I see.
We went through varying degrees of hell with noise, music, bright lights. The children were suffering along with the adults. We were without water, having had our water tanks shut up. We were living on rainwater. Whenever it would rain, people would put buckets out the window and collect rainwater, and it was rationed. I doubt whether anybody got more than 8 ounces a day, if that.
How long do you sit with that many resources tied up and disrupting the whole community with people that are violating violations of the law, that are in fact in a state of anarchy?
I can remember looking out the south side of the building. My attention had been drawn to the fact that the tanks were coming in, and they were pushing all the things on the south side of the church, on the chapel, south side of the chapel, into a big heap. It looked like they were building a bonfire.
We know from the evidence that the tactical element of the FBI was eager to put a quick end to this standoff. The irony of the situation is that the tactical people are actually precipitating the crises of the 19th.
They tell me the commanders want more, and I'm telling them they're wrecking everything that we're doing, and it's getting 10 times worse. And the more they threaten these people, the more they'll lay down right on the floor, and they can run the tanks over them. I mean, that becomes the attitude.
Steve Snyder, in a telephone call during the standoff to his sister Sue, refers to the prophecies in the book of Nahum, chapter 2.
We're talking about the Bible and all the prophecies.
But I know.
Look at, when you get off the phone, you look at the book of Nahum.
Yeah.
The chariots with flaming torches are tanks. That's what Nahum saw in the final days. They're surrounded us. It's the first time in the history of the United States that the government has used tanks against its own people, Sue.
It's stupid, I know it.
Well, I had been talking to the negotiators myself, and I would tell them things that I thought would help. And it seemed like for instance, when they started playing the music, that they would laugh. They acted like they wanted to do everything to antagonize them. They really didn't want to help. And it just seemed like every prediction that David was predicting, they knew about, and they were making these predictions come true. And I kept saying to my family, why are they doing this if they want them to come out?
I am bewildered in the wake of Jonestown why more time wasn't spent, and somebody, not out in the plains of Waco, but maybe in a nice, comfortable office in Washington, didn't immerse themselves in the religious tenets of this Branch Davidian group.
If I knew about his plans to burn the place, we'd had a whole other approach with him. We know about your plan to burn the place and destroy your people. We would have been broadcasting it. We would not even come close to approaching that place.
Numerous microphones were planted inside of Mount Carmel that recorded several conversations of the Davidians reacting to the tanks and the FBI hostage rescue team.
I mean, if they're going to come inside here and storm this place, they're going to be in the wrong. Who's Louis and Steve that they think they're going to go out there and stop the Assyrian when it's God's will that the Assyrian's out there? They can't destroy us unless it's God's will they do. Haven't you read Joel 2 and Isaiah 13, where it says he's going to take us up like flames of fire? I trust in God.
The FBI cannot get up here and say they did not know that David Koresh would respond when they made that assault. They knew that David Koresh was going to respond by trying to burn the place down, And they knew that because they had overheard undercover tapes and because they'd had prior negotiation tapes with him.
Things are only going to get worse out there. This whole situation is not going to go away. You know and I know the only way we're going to resolve this situation is you folks come on out. That's the end of it right there. And now we're going to have to work to a point where this is going to happen. And now the trick is how. And in a situation like this, hey, that's the answer.
I'll tell you what, it definitely is an unusual situation for sure. Oh, sometime when you have a chance to read Isaiah 33 about people living in fire and walking through it and coming out and surviving, seriously, it says, who can dwell in everlasting burnings? That's the question.